And we're back here on the Healthcare Business Network. We're here with Dave Jakielo talking about managing multiple generations. And just to let you know, again, we're at www.hbnradioshow.com. That's hbnradioshow.com. I was talking to Dave at the break here, and I mentioned to him I had a professor once in college who he's actually a favorite professor of mine, and he said to me at the very beginning of the class, he said to the entire class, I will teach you nothing new, and everything I'm going to teach you, you already knew, but you just weren't aware of it. And I think that's quite relevant to the topic we're talking about here today, because how many times I was asking Dave, do you say to yourself, I communicate with a particular group of employees in my office, in my company, in my physician practice, I communicate with one group better than I communicate with another group, and it's highly likely that the reason you might communicate better with one group over another group might be that particular group is from a generation that you're able to communicate better with. So it's something in terms of your approach, Dave was mentioning to me, that you really need to think about, that, who you're speaking to, you need to gauge and to assess what type of communication you're using dependent upon when that person was born, what type of generation they came from, their background, their experiences. So, this is just a terrific, subject, Dave. But I wanted to get to this question of, you mentioned when we started out that this is the first time in history that we are now managing 4 generations at once. What's the reason for this? Is this longer life expectancy, or what? Are people are going to work earlier? Why, or at an earlier age? Why is this happening now?
Well, it's a combination of things. One is it is life expectancy, and the fact that people may not have prepared well enough for the retirement, so they're having to stay longer in the workforce. One of the other major reasons too, Ron, is don't forget that the baby boomers had 76 million, and Generation X only has 51 million. So we need to keep the silent generation around, because we got a shortfall of about 25 million people to fill those jobs. So even though we're talking about unemployment being at a higher rate, there's less people to choose from for the job. So and our economy has been growing. I mean, think about all the retail that didn't exist back in past generations. You had, mom and dad had the grocery store and only maybe needed 3 or 4 employees, whereas now when we take a look at these super mega stores, they need hundreds of employees to be able to fill their roles. So that's why we can still have the silent generation doing part-time work. But we also see that the erosion of retirement benefits and people not having as much money to be able to enjoy the lifestyle they want. They weren't saving enough, so they're going to have to stay in the workforce longer.
Now, getting to this whole issue of conflict resolution, as we all know as managers, we have to handle conflict resolution every day in our offices amongst employees. It'd be very, very good employees, but they could be at odds with each other. How do you handle conflict resolution amongst employees from multiple generations?
Well, we have to make sure that we adapt it. It used to be in the past that we say we treat everybody the same. And that used to be the adage in the management world, treat everybody the way you want to be treated, treat people the same. But because of the different generations, because of their different characteristics, that's incorrect. You as a manager have to treat people the way they want to be treated. So if you take a look at how we can eliminate some of the conflict, is make sure that with the silent generation, you're giving them clear-cut roles and goals as to what you want them to have done. We mentioned it before with the boomers. If you're managing boomers, let them know exactly what you want done and get out of their way. Let them accomplish it. With the Generation X, let them know what the expectations are and what the rewards are for success. And the most important thing to keep in mind for us that are dealing with the millennials, that's anybody under the age of 30, is the most important thing to them is life balance is very important. They're not going to sacrifice their life for work like the other generations did. This generation relied heavily on parents' guidance for decisions. They remember their parents chauffeured them everywhere, took them everywhere, took responsibility for them. So when you're dealing with this generation trying to reduce conflict, you can't get upset if you ask them to stay and do a report and they tell you, no, I have concert tickets tonight. It doesn't mean that they're bad workers, doesn't mean they have what you perceive as a bad work ethic. It's just the ethic that they've grown up in. So how we can probably stop some of the conflict is keep a couple things in mind. the folks that are dealing in with the silent generation, they need help with learning technology. Maybe you can pair up some of the younger people with the silent generation and teach them a little bit about email, the internet, etc. We can also maybe let the younger generation understand how valuable it is to be involved with some of the silent generation. So you could tell them to ask them for advice on how did you handle this particular situation. So the whole idea is that, we're going to have to, in the workplace, try to bring people together in different mechanisms than before. The old-fashioned, let's have a team meeting and a staff meeting and talk about everything isn't really going to work. We have to do more one-on-one work. So, because you want to keep in mind that the various generations, the silent generation feels that the younger people have no work ethic and are a bunch of slackers. Okay? The boomers think that, I told my boss, if you're looking for loyalty, go buy a dog, because, I basically, loyalty is gone. The Xers can be heard saying, if I hear we tried that in 1982 one more time, I think I'm going to throw up on your shoes. And then the millennials can't stand the fact that, I'm not going to stay for a meeting after 5 today because, like I said, I have these concert tickets. So when we're talking about reducing conflict, we have to understand what's driving the 4 generations, which is what we talked about basically, earlier on in this conversation, and then apply those, what their standards are, what's driving them to be able to resolve something. Because just standing there and trying to treat everybody the same way will not work. Because we'll find millennials, if they don't like how you're managing them, they'll just quit. Whereas the other generations may stick it out. And for more of us that are facing and working with the younger kids, we have to realize how to motivate them. We have to realize how to deal with them. And we have to realize that, they're never, ever, ever going to put work before their life all the time. Sometimes, like my son is a millennial. And, yeah, he may want to knock off at 2 o'clock and do something with his friends. But when he gets an idea or he gets a project he's working on, Ron, it's not unusual for him to be doing it till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Same thing with my son. Once they get very driven on a particular point, they really stick at it.
Yeah. And, we would be done at 5 or 6 o'clock, but they'll go to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because, they finally got it, they're finally working on it, and they'll work until it's completed. So with the younger generation, the most important thing to keep in mind is, they don't feel rewarded for hours worked. They feel rewarded for accomplishment. And, we as boomers have to realize that the quantity of time put at work doesn't have anything to do with the quality of time.
Dave, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for coming on our show this week. This is a fascinating topic. It'll really start a lot of people thinking in this area. And also, if any of our listeners out there would like to send you an email, what's your email address that they can drop you a line at?
It's real easy. It's just dave@davespeaks.com.
That's Dave Speaks, plural, correct? With the
correct.
S at the end.
With the S at the end, right. Dave@davespeaks.com.
And I can also let you know that Dave Jakielo also has a weekly newsletter that he sends out with a lot of helpful ideas on management. It covers these types of areas and others. A lot of great book recommendations too, Dave, though I haven't seen you give away any magic tricks in that newsletter.
Well, it's pretty hard to, perform a trick on the newsletter, but... And as we say, when we sign the pledge for magicians, we're not permitted to divulge our secrets because if you think about it, if you really knew how a trick was done, you wouldn't enjoy seeing it again.
I could not agree. I could not agree more. And just to let everybody know, if you have any comments, questions, you can certainly drop me an email. My email address is ron, R-O-N, at hbnradioshow.com. That's hbnradioshow.com. Again, I want to thank our expert guest this week, Dave Jakielo. I want to also thank our assistant engineer, Kevin, over here. And I want to say to everybody out there, again, thank you for taking the time to listen in this week. Good luck, and may the good news be yours.